All right, so now we're going to pick up in Revelation 18, and we're going to start at verse 4. Revelation 18:4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Our subject today, the man in church with the nice suit. You know, it's because of the sacrifice of Jesus that we can come to church and enjoy worship in the beauty of holiness, because he took our sins. We can call on the name of the Lord and he will hear us and answer our prayer in no matter what situation, because of the sacrifice of Jesus. So you mean to tell me that after he did all that, we have this situation, and for the majority of people who go to church, most of them are asleep anyway, don't know what's going on. But there's a man in there. He has a nice suit on. He's smooth. He keeps the seventh day Sabbath. He knows the doctrines of the church, the sanctuary, the Day of Atonement, the state of the dead. He knows all that. But it gets worse. It's not just one of them. There are several of them. They're smooth. But there's something about them. There's a coldness about them. They have no sympathy for the poor. The love of God is not in them. Who are these men? Who are these women? They're in the pulpit. They're deacons, they're elders. They teach Sabbath school class. And the church is full of them. The answer is back up in verse 2. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. I'm sorry, verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. These are demons in church, parading around as if they belong there. And that's why the word of God says, get out of her, come out of her, run for your life. The good thing about this is not the Seventh-day Adventist church. This is Babylon. All the churches who have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, who keep Sunday as the Sabbath, these churches who believe in the immortality of the soul, at a funeral, they will say, oh, don't worry, Sister so-and-so is in the arms of Jesus looking down at us. No wonder the devil is in there. A significant feature in the work of spiritualism just now is the religious garb it is assuming, keeping in the background its grosser principles, which it has heretofore carried so largely in the front. It now assumes to appear as respectably religious in some quarters as any other denomination in the land. It talks of sin, repentance, the atonement, salvation through Christ, almost as orthodoxly as the most approved standards. Under the guise of this profession, what is to hinder it from entrenching itself in almost every denomination in Christendom? The basis of spiritualism is a fundamental dogma in the creeds of almost all the churches. It's in all the churches. But this is not the Seventh-day Adventist church. Its secret principles are, alas, too commonly cherished, and its dark practices too commonly followed, to put them at variance on that ground so long as they seek a common concealment. What then can save Christendom from its seductive influence? Now, before we get to the point, remember one thing. This is not the Seventh-day Adventist church, but the Seventh-day Adventist church is not in the clear. We're not out of the woods yet. Herein is seen another sad result of rejecting the truths offered to the world by the messages of chapter 14 of Revelation. The reason these churches are in this condition is because they have rejected the first, second, and third angels' messages. That's why it's in that condition where demons are walking around nicely dressed in suits and in dresses, saying happy Sabbath. I'm sorry, they're not saying it yet because these are not Adventist churches, but they greet one another. I'm going to get to that in a minute, that happy Sabbath. But they greet one another on Sunday. But they are in disguise. In the religious garb of the day, keeping in the background its grosser principles. It's spiritualism. And it has taken over the churches. And the way it got there is because the people have rejected the first, second, and third angels' messages. But what about the Seventh-day Adventist church? See, this is not the Seventh-day Adventist church because the Seventh-day Adventist church keeps the seventh-day Sabbath. The Seventh-day Adventist church knows that the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. The Seventh-day Adventist church knows that we are living in the Day of Atonement. The Seventh-day Adventist church knows and believes in the sanctuary doctrine. So this is not the Seventh-day Adventist church. This is Babylon. All the churches that have rejected the first, second, and third angels' messages. But the Seventh-day Adventist church is not out of the woods. Knowing that the close of our probation, the third angel's message, is right upon us. The reason the Seventh-day Adventist church was established was because of the third angel's message, which embodies the seventh-day Sabbath. We are not out of the woods because no one will say it in church, talking about the close of our probation and the Sunday law enforcement. How can we be out of the woods when no one will say it in church? We have been on air for over 4 years. This program and it still drives me crazy. That's the only reason we're here, is to warn the people. Because since they won't say it, we have to say it. The warning is, look at what happened to Babylon, because they have rejected the warning of Revelation 14. And now the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the reason we were set up, and now no one is saying it in church. We are on dangerous grounds. Look what happened to Babylon, where demons in suits walk around in church and in dresses. Look what happened to them. And now you mean to tell me that we won't teach the third angel's message in church, and you think we're going to get off? You think we're going to escape? I'm going to show you that that's not possible. If you refuse to teach the third angel's message in church and you think you can get off the hook, you are mistaken. Because while Babylon is not the Seventh-day Adventist church, we have some serious problems in our church, because you can't just do that and think you're going to get away free. God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If there were no light, there would be no shade. But while the shade comes by the sun, it is not created by it. It is some obstruction that causes the shadow. So darkness emanates not from God, but is the result of an intruding object between the soul and God. Disregard of the light that God has given brings the sure result. It creates a shadow, a darkness that is more dark because of the light which has been sent. If a man withdraws himself from light and evidence and yields to Satan's seducing arts, he himself draws the curtain of unbelief about him, so that light cannot be distinguished from darkness. More light and evidence would only be misunderstood by him. The greater the evidence, the greater will be the indifference. This will lead the deceived soul to call darkness light and truth error. So when the light shines on you, and you reject the light, there are consequences. Things don't just keep going on the same. There are consequences. If God sends a warning and you disregard the warning, things don't just keep going on the same as before. When you ignore the warning that God has given, if you don't make any changes in your life, it means that you have rejected the warning. And when you reject God's warning, it opens up the door for the enemy of your soul to come in. That's what happens when you reject the warning. That's why those demons were able to get into Babylon, because they rejected the warning. Things don't just keep going on the same. Whenever you reject the light of God, the devil doesn't have to ask permission to come in, because you already gave it to him. By rejecting the light, you have opened the door to demons, whether it be the church or whether it be your personal life. Rejecting the light opens up the door to demons. In the church and in your personal life. This is a spiritual law. Things don't just stay the same. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, by refusing to preach the third angel's message, the door has been opened for the evil spirit to come in. And what has he done in our church? He has put the people of God to sleep. He's walking around in our churches. Now we're talking about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He's walking around in our churches with a suit on, putting the people to sleep. That's why they don't understand the time of our visitation. That our probation is about to close and we don't know it. That we must be sealed before the shaking. Still telling that lie And I just heard it again this week, still repeating the lie that the latter rain is going to wash away our sins and make us ready to receive the seal of God. And then we will declare the latter rain, where many are going to come into the remnant church of God. If you believe that lie, you're not going to participate in the latter rain because you're not going to get the seal of God. It's a lie straight from hell. Still being preached by pastors and other folk. And as long as you keep believing that our probation is going to close when Jesus leaves the most holy place, then you will be lost. Because our probation does not close right here. It closes before this black line, before the Sunday law is enforced. That's exactly what the enemy wants us to believe. Because if you believe that, you will never get sealed. And the sealing is going on right now while folk are asleep in church, the way the enemy would have it. No, the Seventh-day Adventist church is not Babylon. But if you continue to believe that lie, you will never get the seal of God. Because there are things that you must be doing right now. Some of you, in words, acknowledged reproof. In words, acknowledge reproof, but you do not in heart accept it. You go on the same as before, only being less susceptible to the influence of the Spirit of God, becoming more and more blinded, having less wisdom, less self-control, less moral power, and less zeal and relish for religious and less relish for religious exercises. And unless converted, you will finally yield your hold upon God entirely. You have not made decided changes in your life when reproof has come, because you have not seen and realized your defects of character and the great contrast between your life and the life of Christ. What do your prayers amount to while you regard iniquity in your hearts? Unless you make a thorough change, you will, not far from hence, become weary of reproof, and as did the children of Israel, and like them, you will apostatize from God. That's not a question. It's saying what you will do if you don't wake up. If you don't wake up from this lie. I was shown that if God's people make no efforts on their own, but wait for the refreshing to come upon them and remove their wrongs and correct their errors, if they depend upon that to cleanse them from filthiness of the flesh and spirit and fit them to engage in the loud cry of the third angel, they will be found wanting. The refreshing or power of God comes only on those who have prepared themselves for it by doing the work which God bids them, namely cleansing themselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Because the General Conference has made it so that no pastor will dare preach the third angel's message in the Adventist churches. Because of this, the enemy of your soul is able to come into our churches, because when the third angel's message is rejected, it does not just stay the same. It opens the door to demons. And they have come in. And have put the people of God to sleep. And not only are the people of God asleep, doctrines of demons are told in church. And this is the worst thing. When they talk about that third angel's message, and I've heard this, and I saw another angel come down from heaven. If any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. And they proceed to talk about that. That's the third angel's message. Without talking about any of the 4 Sunday laws that are now pending, without talking about the close of our probation, which is right upon us, the Sunday law enforcement, which is right upon us, and that we must be sealed before the shaking or before our persecution begins, which is the enforcement of the Sunday law. If you can sit up there and talk about Revelation 14:9, and not mention any of these things, then you are just playing games with the people. It would have been better if you don't even mention it at all. Than not to say any of those things we just mentioned. That our probation is about to close and we carry on in church as if Nothing is going on, as if it's business as usual. That is a crime. And you think that while that is going on, that everything carries on as usual. Whenever that happens, demons come in even more, because the third angel's message is being rejected. And they have more freedom to walk around, putting people to sleep in Seventh-day Adventist churches. And that's why very few people understand this. Demons walking around in church with a nice suit on, putting people to sleep. Now, look at this. You got to wonder about some things. The Roman Catholic Church, with all its ramifications throughout the world, forms one vast organization under the control and designed to serve the interests of the papal see. You got to look at this. Its millions of communicants in every country of the globe are instructed to hold themselves as bound to the allegiance of the Pope. Whatever their nationality or their government, they are to regard the authority of the church as above all other, though they may take the oath pledging loyalty to the state. Yet, and I can throw in, not just pledging loyalty to the state, but to whatever organization they're in. Yet, back of this lies the vow of obedience to Rome, absolving them from every pledge inimical to her interests. In other words, absolving them of every loyalty, of every organization contrary to the interests of Rome. These are dangerous people. Because they parade around as if they are loyal to the state, to their church, to their organization, but they're not. They're loyal to Rome. Wait a minute. It looks as if, I didn't say it was, I said it looks as if the General Conference is one of these. One of the million of communicants. Do I have to go down the list? And it's a long list. I said, it looks like. I didn't say it was. Go all the way back when the president said, oh, the Sunday law, there's nothing coming down the pipeline. I'll just name a few because I can't even go through them all. And then how Mark Finley, in the secretary to the president, encouraged all Seventh-day Adventist members to take the jab, even though we have the health message. And then use Roman terminology in the process. Look out for the common good. I'm not saying the Adventist Church, the General Conference, is one of them. I'm saying it looks like it. And then when Pastor David Gates warned us about the Sunday law embedded within the Paris Climate Agreement, Mark Finley produced a video that attacked him and lied to us, saying the Sunday law was not embedded in the Paris Climate Agreement, when anyone who can read will see that it is in there, Article 237. Who are they loyal to? Are they loyal to God, or are they loyal to Rome? It's a long list, and I'm not going to go through it, but it looks bad. And one of the last things was Channel 5 or Channel 7, whatever it was, reported that the Adventist Church was one of the NGOs down at the southern border. And anybody who comes out to defend the Adventist Church in that, if you're going to defend the Adventist Church from being an NGO, then you need to explain exactly what the Adventist Church is doing down there. What's ADRA doing down there? If you're not going to say what they were doing down there, then it's best not to say anything at all. All of this and a lot more gives the impression that the General Conference is loyal to someone else. And then add to that the third angel's message is not allowed to be preached in our churches, which will be the cause of many of our members receiving the mark of the beast. But that's why we're online, to warn the people, because the leadership won't do it. To let our people know this one simple thing. Just as soon as God's people are sealed in their forehead, it is not any mark or seal that can be seen, but a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so they cannot be moved. Just as soon as God's people are sealed and prepared for the shaking, it will come. And the shaking is the Sunday law enforcement, our persecution, a test that you must prepare for ahead of time. And what the leadership of our church is doing is making it so that the people cannot prepare ahead of time, which means that when we are surprised and caught off guard, it means that you will receive the mark of the beast because you did not prepare for this test. And we are right here just before the enforcement of the Sunday law. And the reason we know that is because we watch current events. That's how you know we are right here. But if you still believe, like they're still saying, that our probation closes when Jesus leaves the most holy place, if you continue to believe that, you're going to be lost. Everything in church is not fine and dandy. We are in a crisis. And watching current events like we're about to show you, you will see that the Sunday law can be enforced in a matter of a few days. I can't even say months. It can be enforced in a matter of a few days because that's the way the enemy has set it up. So if you're not paying attention, if you are not watching, you are going to be caught off guard. We are going to be sealed first and then endure the persecution of the Sunday law enforcement. And many of us will lay down our lives. But we're not going to be worried about that. Because whether we wake or we sleep, we will be together with Christ if we prepare ahead of time, which is right now. Then we receive the latter rain so that we can do the loud cry. And then probation closes for all those people in other denominations, not the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because our probation closes here. And they won't tell you that in church. So every day is critical because we are supposed to be getting the victory over sin daily, getting closer and closer. And if you disregard the warning of God, it allows the enemy to come into your life. You can't listen to a warning and then go back to doing the same thing you were doing. That means you disregarded it. That's how the devil got into the church, and that's how he will get into your life. And he doesn't need to ask for permission because you already gave it to him. And so, in the next few minutes, we're going to read a little bit of great controversy, close out chapter 35, because we're going into these last chapters of great controversy, which explains what's happening in the world in real time. And then we're going to look at current events, which explain just where we are. Because you can't just look at the news. The news is not going to tell you anything. Great controversy, liberty of conscience threatened, chapter 35. Marvelous in her shrewdness and cunning is the Roman church. She can read what is to be. She bides her time, seeing that the Protestant churches are paying homage in their acceptance of the false Sabbath, and that they are preparing to enforce it by the very means she herself employed in bygone days. Those who reject the light of truth will yet seek the aid of this self-styled infallible power to exalt an institution that originated with her, Sunday. How readily she will come to the help of Protestants in this work, it is not difficult to conjecture. Who understands better than the papal leaders how to deal with those who are disobedient to the church? The interesting thing here is that it is the Protestants in America who will press the issue of enforcing Sunday as the Sabbath. The Protestants in America will be doing the work for Rome. Now you say, why? Why would they do that? It's because of the paragraph that we just read, and I'm going to read it again because it's coming. There it is right here. The Roman Catholic Church, with all its ramifications throughout the world, forms one vast organization under the control and designed to serve the interests of the papal see. Its millions of communicants in every country of the globe are instructed to hold themselves as bound in allegiance to the Pope. Whatever their nationality or their government, they are to regard the authority of the church as above all other. By the way, why do they do that? Because they got paid. Now, you better be getting paid, because if you would do that for free, you're just an idiot. And really, strong language can still be applied to you, even if you are getting paid. Though they take the oath pledging their loyalty to the state. See, they took an oath, but they got paid as well. Yet, back of this lies the vow of obedience to Rome, absolving them from every pledge inimical to her interests. They can be the leader of whatever organization, but their loyalty does not lie in that organization. Their loyalty lies to Rome. These are dangerous people, and they're all over the place. History testifies of her artful and persistent efforts to insinuate herself into the affairs of nations, and having gained a foothold, to further her aims, even at the ruin of princes and people. In the year of 1204, Pope Innocent III extracted from Peter II, King of Aragon, the following extraordinary oath. I, Peter, King of the Aragonians, profess and promise to be ever faithful and obedient to my Lord, Pope Innocent, to his Catholic successors and the Roman Church, and faithfully to preserve my kingdom in his obedience, defending the Catholic faith and persecuting heretical pravity. This is in harmony with the claims regarding the power of the Roman pontiff, that it is lawful for him to depose emperors, and that he can absolve subjects from their allegiance to unrighteous rulers. And let it be remembered, it is the boast of Rome that she never changes. The principles of Gregory VII and Innocent III are still the principles of the Roman Catholic Church. And had she but the power, she would put them in practice with as much vigor now as in past centuries. Protestants little know what they are doing when they propose to accept the aid of Rome in the work of Sunday exaltation, while they are bent upon the accomplishment of their purpose. Rome is aiming to reestablish her power, to recover her lost supremacy. Let the principles once be established in the United States, that the church may employ or control the power of the state, that religious observances may be enforced by secular laws. In short, that the authority of the church and state is to dominate the conscience, and the triumph of Rome in this country is assured. And we know it's going to happen, and it's in the process of happening right now. God's word has given warning of the impending danger. Let this be unheeded, and the Protestant world will learn what the purposes of Rome really are. Only when it is too late to escape the snare. She is silently growing into power. Her doctrines are exerting their influence in legislative halls, in the churches, and in the hearts of men. She is piling up her lofty and massive structures in the secret recesses of which her former persecutions will be repeated stealthily. And you know what that is, of how the United States government purchased 30,000 guillotines. 15,000 are in the state of Georgia, and 15,000 are in the state of Montana. No matter how many fact checks you read denying it, it's true. Guillotines, 30,000 in the United States. She is piling up her lofty and massive structures in the secret recesses of which her former persecutions will be repeated. Stealthily, all of this is coming on Seventh-day Adventists, and very few people are sounding the alarm. These guillotines are already in the United States. We are sounding the alarm. Our persecution is right around the corner. But you can know all you want that the seventh day is the Sabbath. If you don't prepare for the persecution, you will end up honoring Sunday. You can know all you want that the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. But if you do not prepare for the persecution, you will take heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, and honor Sunday as the Sabbath to save your skin. For this persecution, you must prepare ahead of time by cleansing yourself from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit. Because unless you do that, you will cave in and receive the mark of the beast. Stealthily and unsuspectedly, she is strengthening her forces to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. All that she desires is vantage ground, and this is already being given her. We shall soon see and we shall feel what the purpose of the Roman element is. Whoever shall believe and obey the word of God will thereby incur reproach and persecution. This is the third angel's message. And it is right upon us. The danger is right upon us. How can we carry on business as usual? We are an executive order away from the enforcement of the Sunday law, from our persecution. How can it be business as usual? You can't say happy Sabbath unless you understand this. It's not a happy Sabbath. Unless you are on the road to getting right with God, getting the victory over sin, then it's a happy Sabbath. Either you're growing or you're dying. I'm treading on the upward way. If you're not treading on the upward way, that means you're going downward. Either you are growing or you are dying. It's one or the other. It can't be both. So unless you know this, in church, it's not a happy Sabbath. Let's go to current events.
Now, just moments ago, there was a very brief news conference that was held by Caroline Leavitt. She is the White House press secretary. All of this happening a short time before the first cabinet meeting of President Donald Trump during his second administration. This is the first official meeting. I do actually want to play for you right here those comments, only about 2 minutes in length. But again, this is Caroline Leavitt as she spoke to members of the media.
Good morning.
Hey, Caroline.
About Elon coming to the meeting today.
Yeah.
Why is he being invited to this cabinet meeting?
Well, Elon is working with the cabinet secretaries and their staff every single day to identify waste and fraud and abuse at these respective agencies. And, you know, you've seen many of these cabinet secretaries, all of the cabinet secretaries, take the advice and direction of DOJ. You saw Kelly Loeffler demanding that the SBA staff return to the office. Now, 80% of SBA staff are back in the office. That's a good thing for the American taxpayer. Look at what EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin did. He found 20.
Now, just moments ago, there was a very brief news conference that was.
Okay, we lost. That's not.
Now, just moments ago.
That's not the video. It actually was Caroline, but there is a pattern that I wanted to show you of how
panic is growing.
Before I show you that, there's a pattern that you see in all of Trump's staff and cabinet members. And that is that whenever they say something, they always praise the president. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. He's doing such a great job, and he's the man for the job, and all this praise, and they do it. And I'm looking at this, and I've seen it in the White House, and they have to say it. And it sounds like, it looks as if he's a dictator, kind of what they do in North Korea. This reminds you of Rome, where they are trying to create here in the United States that the president has ultimate power. This is Project 2025, where we read last week where, yeah, they're getting rid of waste, but they're also getting rid of people based on their political affiliation. It's not just getting rid of waste. They're getting rid of any and everyone who would go against Trump. That's what's really happening.
Some Democrats are quietly admitting that if the FBI report is legitimate, Omar is finished. Even those who defended her before are now distancing themselves, unsure if they want to risk going down with her. But the biggest question remains unanswered. Is the document real? And if it is, will the justice system finally act? Could this be the moment where Ilhan Omar goes from congresswoman to criminal defendant? Or will the establishment find a way to bury the truth once again?
I didn't have time to play all this video, but they were saying that Ilhan Omar, the way she became a United States citizen is she married her own brother. That's what they're saying. And that's what it's about. But I'm saying this, I'm showing you this to get to this last part right here.
The stage is set for the next great political battle. Donald Trump has summoned top MAGA lawmakers for a closed-door meeting at Mar-a-Lago, a strategy session unlike any before. The stakes? Nothing less than reshaping the very fabric of Congress. As the scandal around Ilhan Omar reaches its boiling point, Trump makes a decisive move, launching the Clean Congress Initiative, a sweeping campaign to purge the government of those who have betrayed the American people. Standing before a room packed with MAGA leaders, conservative power players, and rising political stars, Trump lays out his vision. We're not stopping with Ilhan Omar. This is just the beginning. For too long, the swamp has protected the corrupt, the compromised, and the un-American. We're going to take our country back one seat at a time. His words electrify the room. There is no hesitation. The mission is clear. Ilhan Omar is the first domino to fall, but she won't be the last. MAGA strategists have already drafted a list of targets. Lawmakers who have supported open borders, engaged in financial corruption, or prioritized global interests over American sovereignty. The 2026 midterms are already in sight, and Trump is building an army to ensure victory. Conservative media rallies behind the movement, branding it as the return of real American leadership. But Democrats and the establishment are terrified. In emergency meetings, party leaders scramble to develop a counteroffensive. Chuck Schumer warns that this is more than a political movement, it's a takeover. Mainstream media outlets sound the alarm, calling it a blatant attempt to create a one-party rule under Trump. But the momentum is undeniable. MAGA isn't just playing defense anymore. They are on the attack. The Omar scandal was just the spark. Now the fire is spreading. The question isn't whether Trump's movement will reshape Congress. It's how far they will go. And more importantly, who's next on the list?
So they're using these things, these certain Democrats, as an excuse because they are going to take over. And it is Project 2025. Once they do that, they can do whatever they want. And you have to remember that convention of states, because certain things they may not be able to do, but they can do it through the convention of states. They can change the Constitution to whatever they say. And that's the thing that's not really getting much attention, but it's moving quietly behind the scenes. Exactly the way Mrs. White said it would be, moving in darkness, because you know the Sunday law is right in the middle of it.
Thanks for staying with us here on Live Now from Fox. As promised, that press conference is getting underway of the South Carolina inmate who was set to be executed by firing squad. Let's listen.
The execution was performed at 6:05:50 by a three-person firing squad and he was pronounced dead by a physician at 6:08 p.m. Sigmund, 67, was sentenced to death in 2002 for murder and burglary in the deaths of David and Gladys Lark. Sigmund used a baseball bat to beat the Larks to death in their Greenville home, April 27, 2001. Sigmund's last statement was read to witnesses by his attorney and is as follows. I want my closing statement to be one of love and a calling to my fellow Christians to help us end the death penalty. An eye for an eye was used as justification to the jury for seeking the death penalty. At that time, I was too ignorant to know how wrong that was. Why? Because we no longer live under the Old Testament law, but now live under the New Testament. Matthew 5:38, 39 says, quote, "You have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that you do not resist an evil person. Whosoever shall smite me on the right cheek, turn to him the other one as well." Romans 6:14, quote, "For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are no longer under the law, but under grace." End quote. Nowhere does God in the New Testament give man the authority to kill another man. That is why the Bible is divided into the Old Testament and the New Testament. Remember the words of Jesus, John 7:19. "Did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keep the law. We are now under God's grace and mercy." I have copies for you, and it will also be posted on our website. Witnesses to the execution included 3 members of the Lark family, a representative from the prosecuting solicitor's office, a representative from the Greenville Sheriff's Department.
So the man actually wanted to go before a firing squad. But it's no accident that this happens now under the Trump administration. Trump pushes for these things. And I think we know that all of this is setting the stage for what we know is going to happen. But this is not to make you afraid. We're not supposed to be afraid. But it just lets us know what's about to happen. As a matter of fact, if you do it the right way, you're not going to be afraid. You're not afraid to die if you're doing it the right way. If you have the right relationship with God, you're not afraid to die. And then God gives grace in that time. See, he doesn't give it to us now because we don't need it now. But at the time when we need it, he gives it to us. And many of us will lay down our lives. But if you lay down your life, then you know you will have eternal life.
Most people think sin is just a mistake, a small misstep, something that can be easily fixed. But what if I told you that every sin, every single one, has a consequence far more dangerous than you ever imagined? That behind the scenes, in the unseen realm, each transgression isn't just an act, but an invitation, an open door allowing dark forces to enter your life. This is not just a theory or religious warning. This is coming straight from someone who was once on the other side. Today, you're going to hear the shocking testimony of a former occultist who reveals what really happens when you sin. You'll discover the hidden spiritual consequences that most churches don't talk about. He explains how every believer falls into one of 3 categories: those completely protected, those vulnerable but unaware, and those already exposed to demonic control. And as you'll see, many people, including pastors, are unknowingly caught in the enemy's trap. This is a warning you cannot afford to ignore. If you've ever felt like something in your life is off, if you've struggled with constant setbacks, unexplained fears, or spiritual attacks, this video might reveal exactly why. Stay with us until the end, because the truth you're about to hear could change your life forever. Before we continue...
Okay, now, everything that is mentioned in this video is 100% true. And I would, anyone who gets a copy of this program, I will include this video because it's like he hits it right on the head. And I would encourage you to watch the entire video. And it proves the point of what we were saying when God gives you information, when God shines light on you, and you disregard the light, or you just don't do anything, that's disregarding the light. What you have really done was you have given Satan permission to enter into your life because you didn't do anything. You disregarded the light. And either you choose God or you choose Satan. So when you disregard the light, you just chose Satan. So he can come in because you just gave him permission. This is true when you sin, you open up yourself to demons, and it has a lot of basic spiritual laws. And I would encourage everyone, which I will send this out to everyone who would like a video, a copy of this recording. Just put your email in the chat. You'll get a copy of this program, and I will include this in it as well. Things that we really do need to know.
Tonight at 6, News Channel 5 investigates the neo-Nazis next door, a large hate group that our investigation discovered is expanding its presence right here in Tennessee. Good evening to you. I'm Carrie Sharp. That group, the so-called Patriot Front, is probably best known for plastering our communities with their hate-filled posters and graffiti. Now our investigation has uncovered new videos that reveal the group is also preparing for battle. Chief Investigative Reporter Phil Williams is continuing his Hate Comes to Main Street investigation. Phil, you have been working on this story for more than 3 months.
That's right. And during that time, we gathered never-before-seen video that shows what the Patriot Front is really up to. And as you're about to see, that includes training men to fight right here in the volunteer state.
Right now, they've got an enemy. If they get rid of their enemies, they're going to have to find a new one. This might be you.
Our investigation began last fall as anti-fascist activists protested an annual white supremacist gathering inside the lodge at Montgomery Bell State Park, about 40 miles west of Nashville. It was an investigation that would eventually lead us across the state to this large compound being built by a hate group right here in Tennessee.
Come on, get in there. Nice.
A compound where members train for battles that sometimes play out on the streets of America.
These are smart, observant, thoughtful Americans who see that our country is going in the wrong direction and has been going in the wrong direction for decades.
Which may be why Jared Taylor, the founder of the American Renaissance Conference, insisted that we not take video of any faces while we were inside the conference.
How about the neo-Nazis?
I don't even know a neo-Nazi.
That is absolutely false. Jared Taylor lied to you.
Jeff Tischhauser tracks hate for the Southern Poverty Law Center, and he knows a lot about the men we identified from outside the conference using facial recognition software. Men like Thomas Rousseau.
Nationalism is natural. Patriotism is inevitable.
Rousseau, seen here during a demonstration in Nashville last summer, heads the Patriot Front, one of the...
When I see this, it just tells me one thing, that the people of God need to get out of the city, because when other groups see this, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to band together and get ready for a fight. That's why the spirit of prophecy says every city will be turned upside down, not only with this, but with wild things in nature, floods, fires, storms. By the way, the storms that are happening across the United States right now, I saw a news flash that was last week, and it was telling everyone to take precautions about fires. You know, strong winds can cause fires. And I'm saying, I've never seen that before. You know, do basic things to make sure the fire doesn't spread. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking about Lahaina, Hawaii. I'm thinking about North Carolina. I'm thinking about California, where we don't believe these fires started naturally. And it's almost as if they're trying to prepare you, because we see now the entire city or area of Palisades, California was wiped out by a fire. Meaning it can happen in other places. So when I see that warning, like a warning of a fire, you gonna warn of a fire when we know those fires were not natural? There were people starting it. Some of them in Hawaii, we saw the beam coming out of the sky, starting the fire. And then, of course, a fact check comes along. Oh, there were no beams coming out of the sky. That was from 1962. It's always going to be a fact check. And the fact check is a lie. Another reason why we got to get out of the city is going to turn crazy, and where there will be no law and order.
Constitutional Convention. Let's stipulate for the sake of argument that you get 34 states to petition Congress, and Congress calls the Constitutional Convention. Now let me quote John Yoo, a lawyer at Cal Berkeley, California. Sorry about that.
Berkeley.
Quote, "I support wholly the objectives behind Governor Abbott's amendments. But once a convention meets, it could propose any amendments it wants or even completely redesign the Constitution. Did
you just see that?
Constitution. There's nothing in the text to propose any amendments it wants or even completely redesign the Constitution. There's nothing in the text of Article 5 that permits Congress or the states to restrict the scope of the convention. A convention, I fear, would engage in wholesale revolution, which seems to be the call in politics these days, from Trump to Sanders." Close quote. A runaway convention.
Two things. Let's work on nomenclature first. And that is, you said a constitutional convention. A constitutional convention is separate from a convention of states. We're not calling for a constitutional convention where we rewrite the Constitution.
Okay, this is the fact check. But I just told you, you have to watch out for the fact checkers.
We're being very specific here about a convention of states to propose amendments to the Constitution. So the Constitution writ large stays precisely the way that it is. We're looking for just 1 or 2 points that we want to clarify in the Constitution by amendments, and that's what you do in a convention of states. Second point, the way that this should be done, states should pass a proposal to join a convention of states with 2 restrictions. One is a limitation of time, the other is a limitation of subject matter. The state should agree in advance. The only issue that this state, let's say Texas, for example, the only issue the state of Texas is authorized to participate in a convention of states is issues X, Y, and Z. You're not authorized to participate in any issue that goes beyond that. And then they could, if they wanted to, have a trigger clause saying that if you act in any way that goes beyond this, your authority is dissolved immediately. Point 2, it should have a limitation in time.
He said they could if they wanted to, but they don't have it. They don't have it, meaning they can do anything in the Convention of States. They can change the Constitution any way they want to do it. And this is just talk. He said they can do that or they can do this, but it's not done. So we know it's going to contain the Sunday law. in the name of temperance and a lot of other things in the name of temperance. But this is the thing no one is talking about. So if Trump can't do everything he wants to do because it has to pass the Senate, it has to pass the House, they're going to use this. And all you need is 34 states to sign on, and then the convention of states is convened, and they can go in there and change the Constitution. And right now, out of that 34 states, there are 26 states. They only need 8 more states, and 18 are considering. 8 out of 18. What are the chances they're going to get the 8? There's a pretty high percentage that they're going to get those 8 states. And it could happen fast. And if it's not happening fast enough, any one thing can trigger, and all of a sudden, boom, they start voting, approve. And then you have 34 states, and they can change the Constitution. It can happen very rapidly.
Are the main thing that law enforcement uses now to catch criminals. That's what it is. As clear as I can say it. What we'll do is I'll put a picture of the flock camera on this so that you'll see it. But they're everywhere. Once you see this thing, you're going to realize that you see them everywhere. It is a camera that is positioned to capture your license. That's what a flock camera is. But these cameras capture more than your license. They can capture the interior of your vehicle as you drive by these cameras, especially the positioning of the camera. And it's legal. And so what happens is this camera captures your tag. And when it captures your tag, it's able to detect where your vehicle has been anywhere in the United States where there are flock cameras. If you're in Georgia and you travel to New York, every time your vehicle tag gets captured by a flock camera, it is entered into a database and they are able to track it.
Wait,
flock
this can't be
cameras,
true, right?
So you know how you have your what you call that thing? That thing that scan where the toll booth scans, you know, automatically. You just drive through your Easy Pass. You know, you drive through with your Easy Pass because you're not gonna stand in that line. You got your Easy Pass, and it picks it up automatically. You don't have to stop. So what they're really doing is they're tracking you. Listen to the whole thing.
Are the main thing that law enforcement uses now to catch criminals. That's what it is. As clear as I can say it. What we'll do is I'll put a picture of the flock camera on this so that you'll see it. But they're everywhere. Once you see this thing, you're going to realize that you see them everywhere. It is a camera that is positioned to capture your license. That's what a flock camera is. But these cameras capture more than your license. They can capture the interior of your vehicle as you drive by these cameras, especially the positioning of the camera. And it's legal. And so what happens is this camera captures your tag. And when it captures your tag, it's able to detect where your vehicle has been anywhere in the United States where there are flock cameras. If you're in Georgia and you travel to New York, every time your vehicle tag gets captured by a flock camera, it is entered into a database and they are able to track it.
Wait,
flock.
this can't be.
So this is just to let you know, and now I got to hurry up. Okay, I'm trying to do one more. This is just to let you know that you have to think about it now, because we're being watched and we're being tracked. And even though this camera and an Easy Pass camera are different, if you don't believe that they can look at all of it, any camera, they actually did that a while ago, where they can look at any camera and pull up anything on you. And they can track everywhere you went, because that's the way they want it. That's the whole point. you have to think about, what you do, before you do it with that in mind, because it's surveillance and obviously they're going to abuse it like everything else. But it's also a reminder, look, just get out of the city. Just get out of the city by the grace of God. All right, one more.
Good evening and welcome to Montgomery Heart Wellness. I have been away for a while. However, I came across this interesting article that talked about post-vaccination syndrome. There's a new vaccine illness reported by the group at Yale. And I thought it'd be interesting to discuss this, however, because in my practice, I see lots of individuals who have most of them received the Pfizer vaccine, about 55%, another 37% received the Moderna vaccine. The onset of symptoms average about almost 600 days. So this is almost 2 years after the vaccine where they had the onset of symptoms. These symptoms were essentially exercise intolerance, fatigue, numbness, brain fog, neuropathy, and they also had some psychological conditions reported shortly before doing the survey, feeling unease, fearfulness, overwhelming sense of worries, helplessness, depression, hopelessness, and the like. They had low health status after the symptoms. They had a high symptom burden and high psychosocial stress.
This is a study that was conducted by Yale University. And this is what they came up with: post-vaccine illnesses. The reason we have to look at this is because they're still pushing vaccines nonstop, as if the vaccines are the most wonderful thing in the world. They're still pushing it. And then the word of God tells us, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Vaccines are going to continue. So we can never leave this subject alone. When you take a vaccine, you really don't know what you're doing. Yes, you do. You do know what you're doing. You're killing yourself.
Despite having multiple treatments. So in essence, there's not much else to go to this. It's a self-reported study. That's a limitation. The other limitation is that this study is not a control study. You like to do control studies where you have a group that receives the vaccine and a group that doesn't, and you compare those groups. This is not. The fact that it was self-reported also creates some kind of a selection bias. So there are many limitations of the vaccine, about 55%, another 37% received Moderna vaccine. The onset of symptoms average about almost 600 days. So this is almost 2 years after the vaccine where they had the onset of symptoms. These symptoms were essentially exercise intolerance, fatigue, numbness, brain fog, neuropathy, and they also had some psychological conditions reported.
Almost 2 years after they took the vaccine. This stuff is coming on them.
Shortly before doing the survey, feeling unease, fearfulness, overwhelming sense of worries, helplessness, depression, hopelessness, and the like. They had low health status after the symptoms. They had a high symptom burden and high psychosocial stress despite having multiple treatments.
Okay, so that's all we have time for today. Let's have our closing prayer. Questions or comments on the other side? Father in heaven, we thank you for the things we've seen today, the things we've learned. We thank you for being present with us. Be with us in all of our circumstances. And we pray that you would give us the victory In Jesus' name, amen. All right, questions or comments today on anything that you have seen or heard, and yes, D. Robinson.
Hi, happy Sabbath. Yes, I heard a sermon 2 weeks ago, and the pastor was saying that the government should not mandate or dictate morality, and that you should be able to love who you love, and that your parental rights should not be infringed upon. And I was just like, what? So those are the last six. Those are part of the last six of the um Ten Commandments. And everybody was saying, oh, it was such a great sermon. He talks about the mark of the beast, but he also tried to separate the Pope from the papacy. It was like, oh, the Pope he's on his deathbed. They're preparing for his funeral. And you don't need to really worry about him. And I'm just like, now I know this man knows his Bible. I don't know much about him, but I'm just like, wow, that's really dangerous. What? I don't know. I don't know what to say to him.
Now, you said he talked about the mark of the beast.
Right.
Now, did he talk about the close of our probation?
No. Didn't mention the Sunday law.
Right.
Didn't mention the seven last plagues. Didn't mention any of the stuff surrounding, because it seems like a lot of people think that they're gonna what they call occupy until he comes. So they're gonna have their jobs and their houses and current locations, whatever, until Jesus cracks the sky. And it's like, oh
Right.
boy,
Right.
that's a huge deception. And my second thing is, what do you consider country living? Because last week I went to a meeting in Tennessee, and good people, well-meaning, and they think they live in the country, but I can see I-65, like it's like 500 yards away. And I was like, this isn't really. So it's considered country according to like the location, as far as it being in the county instead of the city line. But if a major interstate is right there, I don't really consider that country. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Well, I think it depends on the entire environment. Like, I mean, if it's the suburbs, no, I don't consider that the country. But if you are in the country, but yet you're 500 feet from the road, the highway, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be considered, secluded. I, I don't know, but the instruction is get out of the city into a country setting and make sure your neighbors are not that close to you. So I don't know.
But if thousands of cars are driving by and they can see your parking lot and your sanitarium, how is that?
I mean, yeah, I would not want to be that close to a main road like that, where people can actually see your house, that I personally wouldn't do it. But, you know, I don't know, man, if that's all somebody can get and they're out of the city, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm not gonna say, I'm just, for me personally, and you said yes for you, that's not the ideal situation.
I was going to say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
in response to that, Brother Mike, is no, it's not ideal.
I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was going to say that no, that is not the goal. That is not ideal. But what I've learned from watching country living Zooms for persons who made it to the country, they talked about their transition there. And so, what I would say is at least they're not in the dead set city. I live in the city. I live in the city where there's, what's that word? What do you call it? Speeding cameras and drug trafficking cameras on the main road. I'm across the street from a really nice school, but really nice, quote unquote, parochial school, but it's the city. So if the best you can do is get out of the city to the suburb or to a rural area, go and then keep going. That's what I would say. I would definitely not judge them for where they are because they may be better than where you are. And theoretically, that person is better than I am because I'm not, I'm still in the city. So just be positive and continue to witness and share with them platforms talking about country living because that might be all they know. That might be. I know I lived in Greenville, South Carolina, right where that news. Well, technically, I lived in Travelers Rest in Simpsonville, but it's basically they generally say Greenville anyway. And the church I went to, there was a bunch of them that lived in Travelers Rest, ironically, right where I lived, and they used to call it God's country. And I know that they think they're in the country. They're not in the country. They are around wooded areas. They're in an area where like this house owned by my sister and the house across the street is owned by, I think they call it homestead. Anyway, I'm not a Southern girl, but the point is they think they're in the country and they're not in the country, but they're not in the city. They have land to grow and they do grow, but they're not in, I think I would call it
suburbs.
I would call it suburbs. I would call it suburbs because it's not quite up in the mountains, but you do have to drive up to get it. And it's 20 minutes from everything. Everything is 20 minutes. I remember living there. Everything was 20 minutes, 20 minutes to get to anything. But they thought they were in the city. But I think that's the knowledge that they have. And so maybe this particular person will learn more and go further. But just focus on you and getting to where you need to be and being a light for others trying to figure out, hey, what you doing, girl? You looking healthy. You looking good. What you doing? And then use that opportunity to witness.
And like you said, that may be the best they can do. But if that's the best they can do, God is going to protect them there. 500 feet from the interstate, I mean, if that's the best they can do, then but that's not what we're aiming for.
And it's funny because where they live, when you go to the main road, it's not like a city street. It's like a expressway. It's not, there's no curb. When you get to the main street, there's no curb. That's the kind of roadway I'm trying to describe. I'm going to say it's an expressway. There's no toll, but there's no curb. Whereas in the city, there's curbs when you get to the street. So, would you like to be next to where you're going to get hit? Or at least there's a curb. I'm just saying.
Not at all.
I think it's just what they knew. And I have to say, these persons are studied persons. And I'm on a platform with them, studying Revelation, and opportunity will come for me to say again, country living as defined by spirit of prophecy is blank, blank, and blank. And they will just, I know they're comfortable where they are because they're seasoned adults, not, I mean, their children are all grown. That's what I mean by seasoned adults, not senior citizens. All their children are grown and are out the house or should be out the house. And they're not going to want to move because they're very comfortable. That's the other thing of country living. Your mindset. They're, living simply. You can be in the country, but if you're living and have all the amenities like you're in the city, that's not country living. That's not the lifestyle. It's not the place. It's not just the place. It's your mindset. And we need to develop, including myself, that mindset of being in the country, of country living and lifestyle. That's the thing. We have to learn to live simplistically and remove ourselves from the things of the world, quote unquote, the city.
Yes. Yes. And that's what I meant to say. When you move to the country, it's like, I mean, it's going to take some getting used to because it's different. I mean, you're out here with nature. You have insects. I know y'all didn't want to hear that. Yeah, there's insects. I mean, things you have never seen before. I mean, a thing got in my house yesterday. A centipede. The thing is this big. Okay, I shouldn't even tell you that. I'm scaring y'all to death. Okay, but it takes a little getting used to, and I have gotten used to it. I'm much better than what I was because y'all city folk, you city folk, you scared anything crawling. Y'all terrified, but you got it.
I just want to know. Here's the question: Thou shalt not kill. Do you kill it or do you throw it back in nature?
Hey, I killed that thing. Let me tell you, I kill
You
everything.
know what? I felt that way, but I'm rethinking that. I want you to know I felt that way. I felt like if you come in my space, that's the circle of life. You get to die.
You got it.
But if I'm in your space and you're out there, then I need to respect your space. But think about it. Thou shalt not die. Thou shalt not kill. Do we have to kill it to be safe?
Well,
I'm just something to think about. I'm just saying.
I'll tell you this. I read something, Mrs. White said something about this. She said, because somebody asked her the same question. And she said, if you don't kill those insects, they're going to kill you. She said, yeah, you got to kill them.
That was a good laugh. Thank you.
That's what she said. So, I mean, she didn't talk about like if you go out in the woods, but frankly, I kill them there too, if they get them before they get me. But definitely if they're in your space, you gotta get rid of them or you're gonna be in trouble. So being out in the country, like if you're in your house, it takes time. Get your little system. First of all, the ecosystem, you got to wait for that to change. We're out of time. But the ecosystem you got to get that to change. And then you set up your own system the way you want it to block them out as much as possible so that you can be comfortable. Because I mean, I can tell some more stories, which I'm not going to, So was that Nicole? I saw Nicole up there.
I did have a comment about the first thing about Mark Finley and your boy Ted Wilson and them. And I know people are hesitant to make comments about them, but I'm not hesitant at all. They went wrong. They bowed down. They have a pact with the Pope. Period. Point blank. They do. All day, every day. And it wouldn't surprise me if some more of them come out as being a part of it too. I mean, because they're not preaching a message. I get notifications from Ivor Myers with these little lullaby messages. I'm like, what are you doing? And I heard personally myself, I heard Amazing Facts Guy, and this when I stopped listening to him a couple of years back, maybe about 2021, when Trump was in office the first time. He said he went to the White House and met with Trump. I guess this was a moment for him. And he asked him, was there a Sunday law coming down the pipeline? And I spoke to Trump and he said there was nothing coming down the pipeline. It was on his radio broadcast, you know, the Amazing Facts radio broadcast, and I couldn't believe it. So I went and looked at it myself. And I heard this man say it out his mouth. Trump said that there is no. Are you kidding me? I don't give a dog on it. What Trump said, what did the Bible say? The Lord our God said it is coming. He don't know what's coming down the pipeline if they put it in black and white. He don't know. He don't know nothing about prophecy. So for you to even come out your mouth and say there's no son, really? So you just gonna sit here and call my God a liar? Okay, so I'm done with you. But when it comes to evangelism, oh yeah, I jump on that big because it's not about him. I'm doing God's work.
So,
but I'm just saying, you know, they if you're not preaching the third angel's message and you have a gag order, you are just you just a part of the problem too. You are in bed with them because I digress. I just digress.
You know, and so really he's saying you don't have to worry, you can relax. There's no Sunday law coming. That's the same thing
Yeah.
Ted Wilson said, you know. And I told you a story about him. I don't need to go into that, but how they won't really talk about the Sunday law. It's just sickening. It's discouraging. But we're not discouraged. Yes, D. Robinson.
Are people assuming that Trump is a Christian? Because he's not.
No, he's not.
And
He said he's not.
so I don't understand why people are like, oh, Trump did this or that or whatever. Okay, he's not a Christian. So why are you expecting something else?
And he said it in one of his campaigns. I'm not a Christian. I heard him. And
Exactly.
matter of fact, one of your broadcasts, Mike, he said it in one while he was campaigning.
Right.
I'm not a Christian, but I want to give the Christians their power back. I'm
Correct.
like, okay, did y'all miss that? He telling you right there.
The same video when he said we won't have to vote anymore. That's the same video.
Yeah, I believe so.
And what does that mean? We're not gonna have to vote anymore? That's Project 2025. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Interesting discussion.
Thank you.
As I said, anyone who would like the link to this program, put your email in the chat, and also that I'm going to send that link also to that video, which I think everyone should see about the video that we just saw. Spiritual laws and things we need to know. Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I gotta I'm about to have some problems if I don't do this. Yeah, so